Canadam.com. It's not sponsored, but I find it's a good detailed website. In Canada, you need to create an express entry profile, and then you enter the pool and then you get invite. If you get the invitation to apply, you get the permanent residence in Canada. You get different points for different things, which I will be explaining later. Number 1, there are 4 human capital factors. That is the maximum 500 points if you are unmarried. That is without a spouse. If you are with a spouse, you lose 40 points. Hence, you get 460. The good thing is that the spouse can give you these 40 points you lose. So if you are with spouse for 160 for that, and then the spousal factors added, you come to 500 again. And the skill transferability factors, that is 100. And additional points like PNP and LMIA, etc., you get 600. So the total CRS score for Canadian immigration in express entry is 1,200. And then you get invite according to that. Currently, the score is going around 500 something. So if you get around 500 plus points out of 1,200, you'll get the invite, and if you fall down, then sorry, you don't get the invite. Now, let's see the breakdown of all of these. Core human capital factors. Age maximum points for age are 110. That is without a spouse. And the level of education, the max is 150 again without a spouse. Then the official language proficiency is 160. That is without a spouse. The Canadian work experience, you get 80, again without a spouse. Let me break down all of these. The total is 500, and with the spouse you lose 40. Like 10 from the age, 10 from the level of education, 10 from the language, and 10 from the Canadian work experience. This is the whole breakdown of each years of age. You see, 17 years of age do not get any points. 18 years get 90 with the spouse, or 99 without the spouse. Note that max score is from 20 to 29 years of age. That is 110 without a spouse and 100 with a spouse. These are the maximum points you can get for age. And as you age that you get to 30 years, you lose 5 points if you are with a spouse. And if you are without a spouse, you lose 5 points from 110 to 105. Each year you lose 5 additional points, like 95 to 90, 85, 80. Similarly, from here you lose 6, then 5, then again 6, then 5. Then this is the whole breakdown you get, and note that the last age that you get the points is for 44 years old. If you become 44 or more, then sorry, you do not get any points. The max was 110, which is for 20 to 29 years of age. Now, educational factors. If you have less than high school degree, you do not get any point. If you did a high school, the secondary degree, you get 28 with a spouse and 30 without a spouse. If you have 1-year degree, diploma or certificate from a university school, at least of 1 year, it gives you 84 points with a spouse, or 90 without. If you get a 2-year degree or program, or certificate, you get 91 without a spouse, 98 with a spouse. If you have a bachelor's degree, or 3 years or more years of degree, any diploma certificate, you get 112 with the spouse, 120 without. If you have 2 or more certificates, you get 190 with the spouse and 128 without. But note that even if you have 2 or more degrees, one of them must be for 3 years or more. Otherwise, you do not get any points. Now, the master's degree or professional degree, that is which need a license to be practiced, like medicine, veterinary, dentistry, etc. For these, you get 126 with a spouse, 135 without a spouse, and the max score you get are from PhD. You get 140 with a spouse and 150 without a spouse. This is the maximum score you can get from education. But note that you have to get ECA evaluation, Educational Credential Assessment, done from different bodies in Canada to get the points. Now, the language points you get. CLB is the Canadian language benchmark you get for each and every band you get for all the parts of the test. That is reading, listening, writing, or speaking. With the spouse, you lose points. And without spouse, you get the maximum points. Note that points are awarded for each language ability. Let me tell you that for Canada Immigration Express Entry, you can only apply if you have CLB 7 or above. Below that you cannot apply. CLB 7 gives you 16 points for each band with a spouse and 17 without a spouse. The CLB 8 gives you 22 points with a spouse, 23 without a spouse. CLB 9 gives you 29 with a spouse, 31 without a spouse. And the max score you get are for CLB 10 or more, 32 with a spouse and 34 without a spouse. The maximum score is 136 without a spouse. Let me tell you the language requirements. For Federal Skilled Worker Program, CLB 7 is the minimum requirement. For Canadian Experience Class, Tier 1 or Tier 0, CLB 7 is the minimum requirement. Tier 2 or Tier 3, CLB 5. Let me tell you what CLB 5 and 7 exactly is. This is the British Council IELTS page. CLB 7, it's 6666 for listening, reading, writing, and speaking. For CLB 8, it's 7.5 for listening, 6.5 for reading, 6.5 for writing, and for speaking 6.5. CLB 9 is 8777. 8 in listening, 7 in reading, 7 writing, and 7 speaking. CLB 10 gets you the maximum points. It's 8.5 for listening, 8 for reading, 7.5 for writing, speaking 7.5. This is a table you get. CLB 76666, CL 6.5, 6.5, 7.5, and 6.5. CLB 98777. CLB 10-8 for reading, 7.5 for writing, and for listening 8.5, speaking 7.5. Now let's suppose that you got 8.5, 8, 7.5, and 7.5. So you get the points for CLB 10 each. We multiply 34 by 4 and you get 136. But let's assume that we got 6 in reading, 7.5 in writing, 8 in listening, and 7.5 in speaking. 6 is CLB 7, 7.5 is the CLB 10, 8 is CLB 9, and 7.5 is CLB 10. So you get the CLB 7. You get 17 assuming that it is without spouse. CLB 10 it's 34, CLB 9 it's 31, and 7.5 CLB 10 is again 34. So you get 116 out of 136. Let's look at the second factor. That is level of education. If you do not have any high school diploma, that is less than secondary, you do not get any points. If you do have a high school diploma, the secondary education, you get 30 without a spouse and 28 with a spouse. If you have a 1-year diploma or certificate, you get 90 without a spouse and 84 with a spouse. If you have 2 years diploma or degree or certificate, you get 98 points without or 91 with a spouse. If you have a bachelor's degree or 2 years or more of education, you get 120 without a spouse and 112 with a spouse. If you have 2 or more degrees or certificates or diplomas, you get 128 without and 119 with a spouse. But note that one of them must be 3 years or more. If you have a master's degree or a professional degree, by professional degree, they mean programs that need a license, medicine, dentistry, veterinary, optometry, etc. You get 135 points without, and with the spouse, you get 126. Maximum score is you can get are for PhD program. That is 150 without a spouse and 140 with a spouse. Next, second language factors. You get CLB 4, there are no points. For CLB 5 or 6, you get 1 each. For CLB 7 or 8, you get 3 each, with or without a spouse. For CLB 9, you get 6 and 6. And one thing to notice that without a spouse, you get 24 points in total, that is 6 into 4 you get 24, but in total with a spouse you get 22 points. But those with a spouse or common partner accompanying them are kept at 22 points in total, while those without the spouse get 20 for maximum. Now let's look at the last factor, Canadian work experience. None or less than a year, we get 0 points. For 2 years of experience, with the spouse we get 46 points, and without the spouse, we get 53 points. For 3 years of experience, you get 56 points with a spouse, and 64 without a spouse. For 4 years, you get 63 points with a spouse, and 72 without a spouse. 5 years or more, you get 70 points with the spouse, and 80 points without the spouse, and the max you can get is 80. That substitutes the total factor factors. The 500 points you can get individually. The human core factors. Let's look at the spouse factors. The 40 points you get from the spouse. The level of education, language, and the Canadian work experience. If your spouse has less than a high school degree, then it gets you 0 points. If they do have a high school degree or secondary education, get 2 points. If they have a 1-year program, they get 6 points. If they have a 2-year program, they get 7 points. If they have a bachelor's degree or 3 years or more of education, 8 points. If they have 2 or more degrees or certificates, provided that one of them must be of 3 years or more, they get 9 points. For a master's degree or professional degree, get 10 points, and for PhDs again they get 10 points. The max they can give you is either through master's, professional degree, or a doctoral PhD degree that is the max 10. Now the spouse language proficiency. If they have CLB 4, they don't get you any points. If they have CLB 5 or 6, they give you 1 point for each. If they have 7 or 8, they give you 3 points. And if they get CLB 9 or more, they give you 5 points each. Note that you get points for each section individually, that is, 5 multiplied by 4 equals 20. Now the last factor through which the spouse can give you points is the Canadian work experience. That is, if they have a work experience inside Canada. If they have worked inside Canada for less than a year, they do not give you any point. If it's 1 year, they can give you 5 points. It's 2 years, they can give you 7 points. And if it's 3 years, they give you 8 points. If it's 4 years, you get 9 points. And if they have 5 years or more, they give you 10. So to get the maximum points, they should be working in Canada for 5 or more years. This sums up 40 points a spouse can give. Hence, if you lost 40 points with a spouse, you can get them back from them. Now let's look at the third factor, the skill transferability. You get 100 points. The first is education and language. Note that with good official language proficiency, that is CLB 7 or above, you get the points. If you do not have CLB 7 or above, you do not get the max points. If you have a secondary school higher education, you do not get any points. If it's post-secondary credential, that is for 1 year or longer, you get 13 points. You get 25 points. That is a maximum. If you have CLB 9 or more on all, if you lose in any one of them, you do not get 25 points. Points for CLB 7 or more, with 1 or more under CLB 9. That is, even if you get CLB 9 in all and lose in one, you get 13 points. Let's assume you got this score. That is CLB 10, CLB 9, CLB 10, but 1 CLB 7 in listening. So you will be getting 13 points. But if you got this, then you will get 25 points. For 2 years or more post-secondary education, you get 50 points with CLB 9 in all, and 25 points with less than CLB 9. Note that at least one of the credentials or degree was issued on completion of a post-secondary program 3 years or longer. That is, if it is less than 3 years, you do not get the points. So the max score you can get is 50, provided all are CLB 9. Let's check the Canadian work experience and post-secondary degree points. Education and Canadian work experience. If you have a secondary degree or high school degree, you do not get any points. But if you have post-secondary degree of 1 year or longer, you get 25 points. For 2 years or more Canadian work experience. But if you have 1 year of Canadian work experience, you only get 13 points. So 2 or more post-secondary degrees, provided that at least one of them was issued after the completion of post-secondary degree of 3 years, you get 50 points for 2 years or more, and 25 points for 1 year of Canadian work experience. So the max points you can get is 50 for 2 or more post-secondary degrees, provided that you've got 2 years or more work experience in Canada. Now let's look at the foreign work experience points. Foreign work experience is the experience you get outside Canada in your own home country. If you have no work experience, you get 0 points for that. If you have 1 or 2 years of experience, you get the same points for both 1 and 2. You get 25 points provided that you get CLB 9 in all 4, or you get 13 points even if you have 1 or more under CLB 9 for 3 years or more. You get 50 points if you have CLB 9 in all, or 25 points if you have CLB 7, or any one of them is less than CLB 9. So 1 or 2 years of education gives you the same points, but for the maximum points, you need at least 3 years or more of foreign work experience. That is 50. Now let's look at points with Canadian work experience and the foreign work experience. So if you have no work experience in the foreign, if you have 1 or 2 years of experience, you get 25 points, provided that you worked in Canada for 2 years or more. But if you have worked in Canada only for a year, you get 13 points. If you have 3 years or more of foreign work experience, you get 50 points, provided that you've worked in Canada for 2 years or more. But if you have worked only 1 year in Canada, you get 25 points. So the max you get is 50 for 3 years or more foreign work experience and 2 years or more Canadian work experience. This sums up the skill transferability factors. That is for education 50 and the foreign work experience 50. So the max you get is 100. Now let's look at the additional factors, which is a 600 points you can get apart from the spouse. Additional factors are: if you have a brother or a sister living in Canada who is a citizen or a permanent resident, you get 15 points. If you have given the French language test, you get 50 points. If you get a post-secondary degree in Canada, you get 30 points. If you have an arranged employment in Canada LMIA, you get 200 points. If you have a provincial nomination, you get 600 points. But the max you can get is 600 points. And that sums up the core factors, spousal factors, transferability factors, and additional factors. That is 1,200 points. So let's look at how to calculate your CRS score. Search canada.ca CRS calculator. Click the first link, scroll down. You can use this tool. I'm going to use an imaginary scenario. Never married. How old am I? What is your level of education? If you earned a Canadian degree, if not, then you have to give them an ECA report, as discussed earlier. I chose professional degree. Do you have a Canadian degree? No. Official language: English or French. Are your test results less than 2 years old? Yes. Which language test did you give? IELTS. I'm going to enter an imaginary score. Do you have any other language tests? Work experience: how many years of skilled work experience do you have in Canada? None. How many years of foreign skilled work experience do you have? 3 years and more. As we know, 1 year or 2 gives us same points. Do you have a certificate of qualification from any Canadian province? No. Do you have a valid job offer LMIA? And the provincial nomination: do you or your spouse have at least 1 brother or sister in Canada? Let's calculate the score. So this is the breakdown I get. For age, I got the max. Level of education 135. That sums my human capital factors. Spouse factors are 0. Skill transferability 50. Foreign experience 150. So total I got 100. And no additional points. So I got 481. This is CRS score.